Welcome to More Details, Please, with your hosts, Emmanuel and Angela Williams, where we dive deeper into conversations with visionary entrepreneurs to discover what it takes to turn passion into purpose. Listen to real-world stories from self-starters and trailblazers, and discover strategies and innovations shaping a greener future. Whether you are a seasoned business person or just starting out, let this be your go-to resource for inspiration and actionable tips for success. Join us now as we create a brighter, greener future together.
Hello and welcome to our latest episode of More Details, Please, where we get all the details on more and more about entrepreneurship. I'm Angela Williams.
And Emmanuel Williams.
So thank you for joining us today. And for those of you who are new to our podcast, welcome. And we're so glad that you're here. So we're continuing our discussion on time because we discover how this topic ignites many interesting and inspirational conversations about turning your passion into purpose. So today we're talking about how timing is everything when it comes to launching and scaling a business. We've been in business for a number of years, 23 years to be exact, and we are excited to hear from our guest today, Alex Lathery, who runs a digital marketing agency called Blue Collar Bills. So we will talk to him in just a minute, but first, we're going to talk a bit more about how to launch and scale at the right moment. So, Emmanuel, it's both exciting and terrifying, right?
Absolutely. But that's what life is all about. See, if it wasn't for resistance or frictions, we couldn't grow. So we here for a purpose and a reason to enjoy this life. And we got to deal with the challenges of life so that we can become the person that we was intended to be. And so when we talk about entrepreneurship, we love hearing the stories of entrepreneurship because entrepreneurship is a community within itself that you have to have a whole bunch of unique qualities in order to overcome, because you have to continue to overcome and continue to overcome. And so that builds a certain type of personality. It builds a certain type of character. It builds a certain type of person. And we love to be able to have those type of people come on our show so that they can share their nuggets of wisdom with us in helping other people in the entrepreneurship community. And not just in the entrepreneurship community, but just in life in general.
Yeah, because entrepreneurship can be defined as multiple clients or a single client. So even moving along in your career with a job, you are in some ways an entrepreneur. So all the time, money, and effort that you put into turning your dream into a business, we need to start at the right time. So the timing needs to be right. So what I can say is forget about having everything perfect. All lights will not be green. So before you launch your business, just forget about that. Perfection is forever going to hold you back. Preparation, on the other hand, is everything. So I'm going to add to the checklist. Number one, you need to have a clear idea of what you're passionate about. Number two, you want to find a problem to solve. So does your idea solve a pain point? And we're going to hear a lot about what problem was solved with our guests. At least one customer, at least one. And then focus on the things that you can control. Preparation, purpose, and persistent. So again, those four things to keep in mind: a clear idea of what you're passionate about, what problem are you solving, at least one client, and focus on the things you can control: preparation, purpose, and persistence.
Well, that was great, Angela. Thank you for that. I want to add to the conversation is that timing is very critical. And I think a lot of times people underestimate time. There's a time for everything. There's the time to go to work. There's the time to deal with your employees. There's the time to deal with the equipment process when it comes to entrepreneurship. But it takes no time to go into a place where creativity flows from. It takes no time to go into a space where you feel your joy. It takes no time to step into a place where you understand enthusiasm plays a critical role in the decision makings that you make. So when it comes to time, we have to understand how it works and make it work for us. You take Einstein. He was one of the most intelligent persons that ever was on the planet. And it's so funny because what Einstein said is that one of the reasons why he came up with his aha moments, his greatest inventions, it wasn't because he was thinking, it was because he was not thinking. And so as an entrepreneur, we have to be able to find and put some structure in our life to find that space so that we can step outside of time and connect to the creativity that is going to help us make decisions to continue our road as an entrepreneur.
So I'd say if you feel about 70% ready, that's 70% ready, that could be the moment. By the time you're 100% ready, the window may have passed already. So you have to trust that your preparation and your passion for the business is there. We call that the 70% rule of entrepreneurship. 70% ready, get out there. Because what we know for sure is some people think that timing is about being lucky. And there is a little bit of luck, I would say, but the most is when preparation meets that luck. So for us in franchising, we knew that we had a business in the box solution. We knew that we had an opportunity to do something that was repeatable. And that business itself is what we began franchising even internationally. And I would say we started off franchising internationally. But it had a lot to do with the fact that we knew we had the goods. We knew that we were meeting a need. We had at least one customer on the hook, and it was time for us now to put all that preparation into practice. So we linked up with the right individuals, which we're so happy and still have as mentors to this day, that helped us put the franchise system together. And we knew that we were onto something great. And here we are 23 years later.
You know, a lot of times it's the clutter that clouds our mind, conscious, subconscious mind, that creates the ability for us to procrastinate. And when it came to Detail Expert, for me to have came up with this aha concept, it really didn't come from me per se. It came from an 8-year-old boy. And that 8-year-old boy was our son. We sitting on the porch. I'm an engineer, mechanical stationary engineer. He's been in a power plant all his life, running around dealing with boilers and steam. I'm an entrepreneur because we was doing all kinds of selling flowers, balloons, doing all kinds of things. And one day, just sitting on the porch, you know, he's kicking his little legs, eating his little popsicle, and we watching the cars go by. And he said, "Dad, how come we won't use steam to clean cars?" And that was a seed that was sold in my spirit that I could not ignore. And I started doing research. I didn't know anything about the car washing industry. I knew the power of steam. I knew it cleans. But when I started doing my research, when it came to the water regulations and rules and laws and all of that kind of stuff, I saw how the car washing industry was stagnated because of the water situation. But with steam, I know as an engineer, with 2 gallons of water, we can clean as many as 15 cars. And we can do it in a clean way, and we can clean better, and we can clean faster. So in understanding that, putting all that together is what brought us to the process of moving forward towards building our company. But this is the point that I'm trying to make. I listened to those voices, that little voice on my shoulder that just would not be quiet, to keep and it was sort of like a craving. It was sort of like a pregnant moment. I can't really explain it, but it's sort of like something that is craving that got to come out of you. And we all have that. And the reason why I'm sharing my experiences is because we tend to have so much clutter in our minds and so much negativity and so many listen to different people that we can't hear the voice that is trying to tell us which direction to go. So in making decisions as an entrepreneur and coming up with your concept, you have to be introspective just as much as you have to be extra expective in terms of dealing with doing things. And that's why I say that time is very critical, because using clock time for practical purposes to do things that needs to be done is important. But stepping outside of time is where you find that creativity, that joy, that quiet space, that meditation, and that voice that you can hear to help you. And you have to reconcile those two to move forward. And the reconciling is really about stepping out into the unknown.
Yeah, from the outside, it often looks like we were in the right place at the right time. But the truth is, good timing is really accidental, right? So, behind every lucky break, you'll find smart entrepreneurs who've done the following. As Emmanuel said, they've done their homework. So, they've done the groundwork. We had to build systems. We had to focus on the STEAM technology because we saw that as our unique selling proposition. We networked and we stayed consistent. It was those consistent things that we did over and over again. So doing the groundwork. Preparation. We were ready for every opportunity. So when we were introduced to a business consultant, Bob Hurdle from International Expansion Experts, and he told us what he had to offer, we were prepared. We were prepared to make a decision. We were prepared to move forward. We had read the market. We knew what the trends were. We knew that there were EPA regulations around water, et cetera. So we understood what the needs were. Customers are looking for that type of service that is concierge-like. You will come to me and provide a service that is much needed, so I don't have to take out time in my busy day. And it fit with the technology needs at the time. We knew that having those three things in place is what we would call our lucky break. We did our homework. That's the groundwork. We were prepared and we were reading the market.
Yeah, well, patience and persistence, that's key. Because when we franchised in 2008 and we started the process. That was when the economy crashed. So think about it. The worst economy disaster that happened, one of the worst, in 2008. That's when we started the process of franchising. So don't let people tell you that a situation is so bad that you can't pursue your dreams and you can't achieve your dreams. So don't listen to those naysayers. The point that I'm trying to make is that patience and persistence. And we continue to work through that down economy because we continue to stay patient and persistent because we believe in our concept that was so strong that we knew if we can make it through this economy, when it starts to upswing, we will be able to connect and start reaping the benefits. So when people see people who have achieved what we so-called success and money and their business have grown, it didn't happen in a vacuum. It took a lot of work and effort on the back end. And that's the reason why I always go back to, if you're going to be in business, find something that you have a passion for, find something that you love doing, and find something that's going to serve other people. Because at the end of the day, when your back is against the wall, and it will, when you feel like you want to quit, and you will, you got to have something more than just making money to keep you in the game.
Oh, definitely. So we looked at car washing differently, as Emmanuel said. So we focused on the steam aspect, so deep cleaning while saving water. But it wasn't luck. We did our homework. We talked about that. But we really saw that our timing was based on our strategy for success. So in 2008, downturn, we didn't know that when we started. We actually started in 2002. And it was 2006 when we brought the consultant in. When we finally got our ability to franchise, it was 2008. So it was almost like we led up to it. We didn't know that. I mean, obviously you could not have planned it that way. Just like we could not have planned our international expansion that way. When we got that call from the royal family of Abu Dhabi and Dubai, we didn't plan on going to the Middle East before launching in the US. We actually followed the culture. We followed what was happening, and that allowed us to scale up our business. So scaling the business is exciting, but timing is everything. So what is scaling? Scaling is when I decide that I no longer want to be a solopreneur, or in our case, a couplepreneur, but it was time for us to begin to hire employees and really grow the brand and the business. So what are we talking about here? It is remembering that growing your business stronger is not the same as growing your business bigger. For us, we always thought depth. We want to go deep, More details, please, right? We want to build some depth in the business. We want to definitely have the business with a strong foundation. Then we discovered that we had an opportunity due to a client that we can then grow the business wide. And we use franchising as the method to do that. But growing the business stronger is the key, not necessarily bigger. Because the key with scaling is deciding, can I handle more customers without losing control or without losing the quality that customers have become accustomed to in the business? So getting more customers, but you have to have the right system in place. So understanding the systems that we talked about earlier that you want to make sure you have in place. Quality control is one of those systems. Ensuring that you can meet the client's demands. Customers are demanding more. And we knew that we had to be able to grow at a pace that was in line with what we could currently deliver. We couldn't offer customers the pie in the sky that we weren't going to be able to deliver. And it's really, are you at a point where you're turning down business? Are you consistently getting a profit at your current level? Those are some clues that it's time to scale up. So remember, train stronger, not bigger. Handle the customers that you currently have without losing quality control. Demand for the client is important. Can I deliver what they're asking for? Are we turning down work? And are we consistently profitable? If those things are in place, it is time for you to scale.
I want to talk a little bit about tying a knot as an entrepreneur when your back is against the wall and you're ready to quit. How do you get beyond that? Because in the process of us building, I was in that place a lot of times. I was in that place where didn't nobody even, people was like, what the heck are you doing? Me and our son, and he got on his little bow tie, and I got on my shirt, and we outside, and all kinds of things going on. And people looking at you like you half crazy. And how do you handle when you say, I can't see my way. I'm at a crossroad where I can't get out of this space that I'm in. A lot of people just throw their hands up and quit because they always feel like they have that option. But this podcast is really about focusing in on those times when you got a knot that you just can't get out of and you can't see your way out of the situation and you decide not to quit. That's what I want to talk about. There were times when I said to myself, what the heck am I doing? I'm an engineer. My wife is an accountant. We making good money and I don't have to be doing this. But why am I out here on my knees with these steamers, washing people's cars for free and just doing all of this? And what was happening was the voice, that little voice, was so strong in my spirit, I couldn't stop. And the way that I was able to overcome was to reset myself, get quiet, find some quiet space, and watch the synchronicities in your life and how all of that stuff unfold. I'll tell you one time in particular, when I was at a crossroad and didn't know which way to go and was feeling discouraged. I'm in a bed asleep and the TV was on and I was listening to it. I didn't even realize that I was listening to it. And it was this program that came on and it was called What Makes the Great Great. And they had all of these athletes that had achieved a lot of success on it. And Sugar Ray Leonard is one of my favorite athletes. And he was on there and he was talking. Now I'm asleep. I'm halfway asleep. And he said, when somebody believes in themselves, when a person believes in themselves, when nobody else believes in themselves, and I sat up in the bed and my wheels just started back turning. And I got back on a process of moving forward with the business. And it's funny because another synchronicity was a big one was we got a call from the royal family. We went over to Dubai. I mean, it's like, how did I get here? So the point that I'm trying to make is it going to be hard? Yes. Are you going to run into roadblocks? Yes. Are you going to feel like throwing up your towel? Yes. But the key thing is you're going to always be aware enough to see those synchronicities, be quiet enough, and the answer will come.
Yeah, so for us, one of the biggest growth decisions was moving into franchising, but it wasn't something that we rushed into. I mean, it was a moment where we really had to ask ourselves, is our model ready to be replicated? Is our brand strong enough to carry others? And those are very hard thought-provoking questions. So we weren't looking for growth, but we were looking for the right kind of growth, meaning we didn't go out saying, oh, it's time for us to grow. We weren't looking for it. We wanted to create opportunities for others, and franchising was the way for us to do that. But it's no shortcut. Franchising is not a shortcut. If you do it too early, it'll expose every weakness in the business. But if the timing is right, it can be one of the most powerful ways to grow with purpose. So now we're going to have our guests to join us. So we're so excited for our guest today, Alex, who you will meet in just a second. We are excited that he's here to share. Alex, who started off as a mechanical engineer. And when we think about Alex at 26 years old and being able to retire his father from policing, it is a wonderful journey. So Alex, let's talk a bit about the biggest lessons that you've learned from starting your own business.
Yeah, so thanks for having me on, and just listening to your guys' story, super inspiring, and I didn't know half of that, so I had a good time just listening to kind of a bit of a background from you guys. But yeah, when I kind of look back, it's been a crazy couple of years going from mechanical engineer, as you have experienced, to jumping into a business world. And a lot of what you take from that background is good. You have an analytical mindset, you are trained to solve problems, but you bring a lot of negative things as well when you go into the entrepreneurship space, where so much of it is about speed. It's about, thinking the right amount, not overthinking. And so it's been a crazy adjustment, unlearning some of the bad, and then also learning to bring in a lot of the good, at least from my mechanical engineering type of a background, into business. Yeah, as I kind of talk about the biggest lessons that I have personally learned, this is the second business that I've started, is Cincinnati Painting Co., which we'll talk about a little bit as well. So I kind of have gone through, the first version. I have zero knowledge, zero experience, and you learn a few things there. And then you go into the second round, and the second round for me was with partners. So totally new experience there, but getting to bring the lessons and mistakes that I made from the first time into a second time, but also having experience from, my other partners who've done businesses and who have completely different backgrounds as well. So kind of getting to tie all that in together, it's been transformational for me. And so I can kind of start with the biggest first lesson that I probably ever learned, and that really is the catalyst for almost all of the success that I've had with Blue Collar Builds, which is the agency, the digital marketing agency. And for me, that goes back to the first lesson that I basically ever got in entrepreneurship, which is you need to niche down. And that's a term that's thrown around a lot. You can talk about niching down in terms of what type of service that you provide. You can talk about it in terms of what type of clients that you'll actually go and service. And so I heard it used in all these different avenues. And for me, I knew I could build websites. I knew that there was a wide range of businesses that needed that. Startups need it, small businesses need it, pretty much everybody does. And so you can go and be a generalist, but I knew I didn't want to do that. I knew that I had to pick something and pick somebody. And so for me, I kind of took a little bit of a testing approach. I started to work with a couple of people for free. I started to just build some projects for fun. And, ultimately I had a guy that I went to church with who owned a landscaping company. He just bought it recently because he had worked in it. Owner was retiring. He basically bought it from that owner and kind of got, promoted up into the owner. So built him a website for free for his landscaping business that checked kind of the box. It was in the blue collar niche. It was obviously for a friend. And I knew that when I was looking at the potential industries that I could go into, that for me, just having my engineering background, you don't typically think of engineers as very artistic people. They're usually very heavy on math. They're very analytical. Sometimes people would say dry, it depends on the person, but sometimes they're just very, very cut and dry, logic based. And I did not have a design background. I jumped into a field where, yes, you need to have the technical skills and the technical know-how, but there's a whole other component of it, which is at least 50%, which is design. You have to make something that looks good as well. And so I looked at that and I said, well, I definitely don't have the design skills yet, but I'm working on it. I'm practicing on it. I'm doing stuff every day to get better in those areas where I'm not very good. And when I look at the market, people that are out there pitching to startups, I am probably never going to compete to those guys. It's going to take me years at minimum, because those guys have been practicing that for years. And those agencies have been doing this for a decade. And so where can I go that I can leverage the skills that I do have, which are the ability to, make websites, design them, and kind of bring that into an industry where it's really kind of underserved, at least at the time that I jumped into it. And all of the stars aligned for me for that to be the blue collar industry, because I had that first client that was a landscaping business. As I was going and doing research about how I wanted to design and build his website, I'm looking at all these other competitor websites. I'm looking at all of these service businesses, and most of them, if they even had a website, because a lot of them don't, had super, super basic, super old, buggy, broken websites. And I knew, at least at that moment, I'm like, I guarantee I can build something better than that. And so that kind of gave me the energy to pursue that even further. I got another client for free that I did free work for that was a junk removal business. And so I built them a website. And then after those two, I basically started to just continue to stack down that path, came up with the name of Blue Collar Builds, and all of it really started to fit together almost perfectly. And that principle that always stuck in my head was you have to niche down. And for me, again, that was the service that I was doing, web design and development. I didn't do anything else. And it was for blue collar businesses. And so we named ourselves Blue Collar Builds, trying to obviously very clearly communicate who we service and then also kind of what we do, website builder. And so that was, for me, the biggest probably lesson that I picked up in all of that. And to this day, it's probably the most impactful decision that I made was to kind of go down that niche and to ultimately choose that name.
That's a very unique name. Did you have some? I want you to think about this question. What was the timing like for that? So when you decided that I am going to not leave the career of mechanical engineering and R&D, but I am now going to be building websites for blue collar businesses.
Well, before you answer that, Alex, I got a question I want you to think about. And I want to go a little bit deeper, more detail, please. Going back to your childhood, I'm making connections. So, blue collar, you are a mechanical engineer, you website designer, entrepreneur, and the ability to find a niche so that you could build the business and generate capital. How did you end up going to school to be a mechanical engineer and connect all of this to maybe something that you was doing when you was a kid?
Yeah, so I really always knew that I wanted to be an engineer, like probably as early back as I could ever think. I had always kind of tinkered with things. I obviously was like kind of enjoyed math. Most engineers are pretty inclined to math, so I always did well in math. I really like science. I've always been curious about anything, learning everything. And then really when I hit into high school, primarily, we had an engineering kind of class, right? So it was where you could go and just kind of get your feet wet, so to speak, in general engineering concepts, tinkering on like little toy robots, doing a little bit of programming. And so I had always kind of thought that I wanted to go into engineering. And part of that also stems from everybody's probably seen, the original Iron Man movie. And everybody knows Tony Stark. He's kind of like the engineer, businessman. All kind of happened, roughly around the same couple of years. That's when I started to go into those classes. That's when I saw that movie. And I just continued down that path. I started in those classes. I really enjoyed them. I did robotics in high school, so I was on our robotics team. And I just kind of kept going and never really stopped enjoying it. And then I also was simultaneously exploring the business side because I was also taking business classes in our high school. And I was a part of an organization called DECA, where you do business role plays and competitions. There you go, got DECA. So I did that in high school. I did the engineering in high school. And I loved both of them. And so I knew I wanted to be an engineer, majored in it in college, and just never stopped enjoying that part of the process. And so it was really kind of just a continuation of those things that I enjoyed as a kid, taking those into high school, learning about them in a more like formalized way. And then, most people, they go down a path and there's really two things that can happen is one, you love it. Two, you hate it, and then you can decide what to do from there. I never stopped loving it, and so I really just kept going with it. And all of that ultimately translated to really the things that I do today. It's no different. Engineering is basically problem solving, and it's using kind of like the laws of physics and such to go and solve those problems. And business is really no different. It's just that the laws that you're kind of dealing with are a little bit different, and you're dealing with a lot of people as well, right? So that's kind of how I started down that path is, basically I just wanted to become like the next Tony Stark Iron Man kind of a guy working on products, doing some engineering work. And then while I was doing that, was also exploring the business side of things. And that always led up to really college was where I kind of had, you talk about the right timing. That was really where I started to have to think about what I wanted to do with like my actual career, because in high school, you're just having fun, you're just exploring it. But in college, you really start to think about, is this the right time to pick that major, to take this job, to start a business? And that was where it all kind of clicked for me, was the intersection of all of those things that I liked doing, basically from the.
Well, Tony Stark had all of the sharp cars and the hot women as well.
Yeah, that's probably a factor to anybody that's under the age of 18.
Right. So how did blue collar come up? I mean, how did that become a part of your equation?
Yeah, so, I'm from the Midwest. So I basically live in Cincinnati, about 30 minutes away from that, in the suburbs. And so like I grew up where we had a cornfield literally right outside my house. So I could see cornfields, farmers all over. We have a really big family that's kind of all centrally located here. So like we would go to my grandma's every single Sunday for Sunday dinner with everybody. And that's kind of like the lifestyle that I had growing up. I would go and I would help my grandparents do chores. I would help them kind of do yard work. Like that's just kind of the lifestyle that we had growing up. And so that is a very common lifestyle, not only for just people that live, in the Midwest, in this part of the country, but also for like a lot of blue collar business owners. And so as I started to do client work, I kind of got to ask myself, and I'd had experience at the time too of working on like a job side, working on a corporate side, and then also doing some entrepreneurial stuff, working, just with one business owner, the guy that started the business, or, he's the sole owner of the business. And I had to pretty much ask myself, like, who do I like to work with, and kind of what does who resonates more with me as a business owner. And for me, in addition to the niching down and what was starting to work from a business standpoint, I really just enjoyed talking to and working with the blue collar business owners. They had a lot of times a similar background to me. They really put a lot of emphasis on just the hustle, the hard work that kind of goes into starting and growing a business versus the more corporate or maybe more startup side of things, where a lot of it is about the glitz and the glam and they're getting funding, and it's all about these really big shows of things. I mean, you're usually working with multiple people. A lot of times you're not even working with the owners of the business, and it's just a totally different engagement versus you're talking to one person, you're talking to the person that started this business with pretty much nothing in most cases and took it to where it is today. And so that always resonated more with me from my like upbringing, but also as I had just started my business, it's like I felt like I could really empathize with what they were going through because I was going through the exact same thing.
Yeah. So let's talk about branding. I mean, you're definitely in the business of logos and brand design, website development, etc., and SEO, which is extremely important, search engine optimization, for those who may not know. So what advice do you give the listeners who want to get the timing right around branding before launching their business?
Yeah, so I think people really, really overcomplicate the branding side, and for understandable reasons, because I did when I first started. Blue Collar Builds was not the first name that I stumbled on. I went through a laundry list of like 50 different names, and I still remember going into Namecheap, which is where I bought my domain from. Some people will probably look at like GoDaddy or similar. And I was like typing every single business name that I had in. I'm like, is this one taken? Is this one taken? And that crossed a ton of them off for me. And then luckily, Blue Collar Builds, I was like, after I went through so many and they were all just taken, I'm like, all right, well, maybe I'll just not use .com. I'll go with something else. But what should I actually name the business from a brand positioning standpoint? That's when I landed on Blue Collar Builds. And so now I've gone through this exercise twice. Our new business, Cincinnati Painting Co., was the second time around, and that one was a much smoother experience, having done this a lot of times now, not only with myself, but also with clients. And so the way that I thought about it and the way that I typically encourage anybody that I talk to think about their business name and just in general how they want to be perceived from a brand standpoint, there's the kind of two different paths that you can go on. One is like, I have a vision for what this company is going to be. This is kind of really in line with what you guys did. You clearly are doing detailing, so it's very clearly communicated. And so you guys knew what you wanted to kind of position that as. You had the idea around Steam, you had the obviously service name of detailing is going to kind of be incorporated within that. And so if you have that clear vision about what you want it to be, it's really easy to then go down that path. And that's a really good path because it fits with everything that you're going to communicate and do from a business standpoint. The other side of that is like, I have zero clue of what to name ourselves, where to start. And typically when people are in that position, this is where the timing comes in, is because then they spend the next week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks, sometimes months, just trying to figure out what they want to name themselves. And how do I even get started? There's a lot of that kind of, hesitation to just start. And when I see someone in that position, typically what I say is just pick your service and pick your location and put it in a name, maybe with an adjective next to it, like, the best plumbers of Cincinnati. And that's a beautiful approach for a couple of reasons. One, for search engine optimization, your location and your service are in the name. You'll have a head start on that, basically with zero effort. So it's really beneficial to start with that in general, which is why our name is Cincinnati Painting Co. And then two, when you think about kind of differentiating yourselves versus everybody, the bare minimum that you need to hit is that people understand what you do and who you do it for within 5 seconds or less. And the name and service location inside of the name, that's like the easiest way to hit that. And so some of the best examples that I've seen within that is Cincinnati Painting Company, Columbus Painting Company, Top Choice Lawn Care. There's a company out in Texas called Top Choice Lawn Care. And so you really don't have to go crazy with this vision if you don't have it, or these really complex names. Start with something super simple and then focus on actually getting the business off the ground and running. And then the timing will really be figured out at that point, and you'll have a lot of a head start versus people that want to just spin their wheels even on that first step.
So it's anything just to get started, because that procrastination, oh gosh, it will definitely steal your joy.
Yeah.
So let's talk about websites. What makes a good service business website?
Yeah, so when I think about it, I think about really the thing that I talked about with the business name. It's the exact same principle. How quickly can people understand who you are, so what you guys do, and then who or where you do it for? Cincinnati Painting Company, right on the front of our website, it says Painting by Cincinnati's Best. We do painting, and we do it in Cincinnati. And you really don't have to complicate that any more than it is. You can play things up a little bit with these crazy design elements. You can make things more interactive, but at a very fundamental level, you just need to have something there that very clearly communicates what you do and who you do it for. And I think that a lot of times people, they don't realize that that's really all that you need to get started. Because at the end of the day, when you first start out, you're going to be doing a lot of the legwork and kind of putting a lot of the muscle in yourself, because nobody knows who you are. When you kind of start to think about how can this website evolve and do more for me as we grow as a business, that's when some of the more advanced tactics come in, but you don't need to focus and worry about those right at the beginning. And so you always start there. The kind of places that you can go beyond that is really down two roads. You can go down the side of conversion rate optimizations. People that are going to your website, whether they find you from Facebook, whether they find you from Google, whether they found you from a yard sign that you put out, they will probably go to your website. There's really only two things they can do. They can call you or they can go to your website. And so you can focus on optimizing the website to make sure that the people that do go there end up calling you more so than if you did not optimize things. And then the other side of that you can go and kind of what makes a good service business website is, does it have the fundamentals in place to rank well in Google, basically, so that you get leads from Google. So there's the kind of lead generation side of it. And then there's just does it look good and does it communicate our value proposition well enough to bring us customers? And when I think about how do you do those both effectively, when you're talking about how do you get people to want to call you from the website, to feel like they can trust you, it is all about the trust. And so having social proof on the website through reviews, certifications, if you're in a specific industry, having before and after pictures, if you're in an industry like painting, where you want to show people the work that you guys have done. If you're trying to hire a painting company and they can't show you any of the things that they've painted, you're probably not going to feel very comfortable working with them. same with a fence company, same with a landscaper. And so it's all about how can you build that trust and what you can do to put that on display on the website through some of those tactics. The second side of that is really simple. It's just to have the call to actions, your phone number link, the get a quote link, very prominent and very focused, because if people can't click the actual next step, they're not going to take the next step. And so those are really, really simple ways that you can do that on the how do you get people to actually convert into leads. And then on the search engine optimization side, it's really just kind of also tying back to what we talked about with, again, the brand name, with the very fundamental element of the website is, does the content on the website very clearly tell who you service and what you do? And if you have that, you have a decent foundation for a search engine to understand what you guys do and who you do it for, and to then recommend you to people that are searching for that if they feel like you are a high quality result or business. Because at the end of the day, Google wants to give people on their platform the best recommendation, because that keeps people coming back to their platform. They can make money off of ads at that point. And so the easier you make it for them to feel confident in recommending you by telling them what you do and where you do it, and then also by having authority, and we can kind of get into that rabbit hole if you want, but the easier you make it for them to recommend you, the more likely they're going to recommend you. And so those are kind of the two kind of main pillars of what makes a good service business website. It is the fundamentals from just drawing people into the website and making sure that they trust the business and then taking that next step. And then it's, do you want to actually generate leads through the website through search engine optimization? And kind of having both of those in place, you have a really solid service business website.
We could definitely get into the fundamentals, but not this show, because we will probably run way over. The producer is going to get us. But you are in a very unique situation. From Cincinnati Paint Co. and Blue Collar Builds, you're both the vendor agency to businesses like being a part owner in a home service business. So what is it like being on both sides of the service business?
It was probably one of the best decisions that I've made. It's a win-win. One, I get to see from the other side what really matters when you're talking to a client and they're trying to grow a business, because we're trying to grow a business from scratch. So having that front row seat of what that's like shows me a lot that I can do to add value on the agency side. Two, it's diversification as well. I do a lot, obviously, on the digital side of things, nationally, internationally. I've worked with companies in a ton of different countries. And when you have that business, the next obvious step for you is to take the skills that you have in that business and then use it to branch out and kind of diversify with what you've got. And so for me, I could design and build websites, I could do logos, I could do branding, and I could do search engine optimization. And so what do you do with those skills? Well, when you niche down and you're serving blue collar people, you start a blue collar business. And so I just by happenstance, I kind of always wanted to do that. I had been friends with a couple of guys that are entrepreneurs in the Cincinnati area for just about 1 to 2 years. And, as this was all kind of boiling in my head, they approached me and said that they were trying to buy a business. They were tired of waiting for a deal to come down that was like the right deal for them, and they wanted to just start one. They had a finance background and they had an operations background. I had a marketing background, and it was like the perfect, trifecta. So we started one. And that is basically, how we got to where we are today with it. So it's been amazing kind of being on both sides of it.
Well, how did you get your dad to work with you in the business? How did that happen?
Yeah, so basically, I'd been running the business, the Blue Collar Builds agency, for probably about 1.5 years at the time, maybe 2 years, like right around when he was kind of nearing the end of his career in policing. So he had done his like minimum requirement to get pension, but most of them stay on, for another 5 to 10 years, just because nobody retires that early. And so he was really kind of burnt out in the career in general. He was kind of just slugging his way through to finish it. And all of his kids at the time were moved out. So, they're empty nesters. And for them, he kind of got to like this point where he was interested enough in my business. And I had my brother help me out every now and then, for a little bit of extra money when I was super busy. And I had him help me out just out of his own interest here and there when I was super busy. And so it kind of came up of like, well, what would this look like if we were to work together on it? I don't have to continue working as a police officer for the rest of my life. You know, I've only got a couple of years left and I could retire early. This is kind of what I would need to make that work financially. And that worked for me from a business standpoint. And then, of course, you know, I wanted to work with my dad. It would be a really cool concept. A lot of people are scared of kind of mixing the family and business, but the way that I've always looked at that is like, I don't know anybody that I could trust more than like my family. So if I can't trust, you know, my dad to be in business with me, then I don't know how I could ever have like a business partner. And so he had interests and it was going to work from a financial standpoint. And so we just did it. You know, he put in his retirement paperwork. And in those first couple months, as he was kind of transitioning out of that job and transitioning into working with me full time, you know, we started to train him up. I taught him how to build websites from the ground up. I kind of taught him everything from like a process standpoint that I had up to that point. And then luckily, you know, one of the benefits of a multi-decade career in policing is that you talk to people all the time. I didn't have to really upskill him at all in some of those soft skills. How do you talk to people? How do you deal with clients that are upset? How do you sell people on an idea? A lot of that stuff he had enough experience just naturally from the career that he had. And so it was that upskilling period really more on the technical side to where now, you know, I don't even really do a lot of the builds. I stay way more on the design side of things now. And he is a lot more on like the project management, the website building and launching of those websites.
Well, you know, that's the reason why I love entrepreneurship, because the value is not just in how much money you make, but the value of you having the opportunity and ability to work with your dad. In this stage in his life, in this stage in your life, you can't put a money value on that.
Nope.
And so a lot of the value of an entrepreneur is not just how much money you make or how much you accumulate, but it's who you become, the lives you touch, and the relationships that you have, the opportunity to galvanize and to build to make your life more fulfilling.
Absolutely. Yeah, he always says that he works way harder now than he did when he was a cop, but it's, you know, it's from the comfort of his own home. And
Yes.
every 10 minutes, if he wants to go take a step outside, get some sun, and, you know, he has that time and kind of location freedom as well.
Well, I always say, if you love what you do, you will never work a day in your life.
Yep.
Which is nice. You cover a lot, Alex, which is fantastic. So we are so happy to have you here. Just a couple things that I want to just reiterate before we ask you, how will people get in touch with you? Mm-hmm. You focused on having a clear message, even deciding on your branding and your website. What do you stand for? And include location in that. That's going to make it easy. Who are you serving? Back to that location thing. And what problem are you solving? So make it very clear what you are solving up front. And once you have that clear in mind, you're going to think consistently. Visually, does this look reflect my business? And from being a branding professional, that's important. That consistency and ensuring it reflects what you do. If people look for 5 seconds, do they know what you do? Do they land on the right page? Why are we here? I really like the fact that you are working with your dad, as Emmanuel said, and you're right. You can't trust family, which is why Emmanuel and I, we laugh together, we cry together. It is so interesting that we say things like, is the mic 50% between you and I? We like to be 50-50, though we know that is never possible.
Yeah.
So understanding, how did timing play into making the dream possible to retire your dad?
Yeah, so it basically kind of worked like this. Like when you are retirement eligible as a police officer, you can do this. It's called a DROP program, Deferred Retirement Option Plan. And every year that you stay in that, you get more money when you retire, basically. And so he was right around the point of, if I want to renew kind of a year sort of a deal, to do the full 5 years. I think he had 2 years into it at that time. Typically you do 5. And so from a timing standpoint for him, it was really like the critical point to make that decision. And for me at the time, I was just basically starting like my career actually as an engineer. So I was really doing both. I was doing everything. I had not gone full time just as a business owner or anything. I was doing everything across the whole business. I had some contractors that I was working with, but I was really starting to get burnt on both ends of the candle, working before work, working after work, working all day at work. And so I was getting really, really bogged down from a scalability standpoint. just as kind of a solopreneur, and he was getting really burnt out with his career. And so he had that interest again to join and maybe help out a little bit with what I was doing. I really needed the help because I was starting to get super overloaded with my actual job, and we were super busy from a business standpoint. And so both of those things kind of happened right at the right time for, me financially to be able to extend that offer to him, and then for him to be both financially and mentally ready to step away from what he's known for his entire life and into something completely new, the world of tech and building websites, and away from the world of policing.
Well, Alex, I am just so proud of you to be so young. You got a lot of success that you're going to achieve in your life. There's going to be a lot of people that you're going to touch. You're going to accumulate a lot of things, but just keep in mind your purpose and utilizing your gifts and your talents that God has given you to help others and serve people. And I just wanted to let you know I am just so proud of you.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that.
So today's conversation reminded us of whether you're pivoting careers or scaling the business or bringing your family into the fold, timing isn't about luck. It's about planning, preparing, and moving with purpose. So no holding back for the perfect moment. So thank you, Alex. Where can people find you? Follow your work or get in touch with you at Blue Collar Bills or Cincinnati Painting Co.
Yeah, so for the agency side of things, at Alex Lathery, Lathery on X, which is really where I'm super active on. And then you can find me on Instagram as well. If you find me on X, you'll find me on it all. My website is www.bluecollarbuilds.tech, ECH, and you can find pretty much anything that I do on that website. And then from the painting company side of things, you'll also find that on that website because I've linked it out to everything.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Alex. So if today's episode spoke to you, share it with someone who needs a little bit of encouragement, leave us a review, and don't forget to subscribe. So never miss an episode. So until next time, remember, your passion is your purpose. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to More Details, Please, presented by Emmanuel and Angela Williams from DetailXPerts, the mobile steam cleaning company dedicated to protecting the planet. Be sure to subscribe to More Details, Please on your favorite podcast platform. You can also follow us on Facebook at DetailXperts and visit DetailXperts.net. That's DetailXperts.net. We hope you've gained some valuable insights from our conversations today. Stay driven by curiosity, and we'll bring you more details next time.